several board members here today online and present, and several others. Thanks again for coming. We still expect more people. We usually have about 45 or so between those who are present and those online. I think there's some confusion about the 6:15 versus 6:30. Special welcome to our guests. We have GDP, as they said they call you. Yeah, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm sorry. Jennifer Dailey-Provost, and then Chris Wharton. And let's see, we have one of the candidates here now, Jen Plumb. Jennifer Plumb.
Derek will be here at 7 o'clock.
Derek will be here soon. Thank you. Derek Kitchen. So,
And Katherine Kennedy's also on it.
who is that?
Katherine Kennedy.
Oh, yes, of course. So let's get this underway, shall we? We'll have Randall Smith, our treasurer of the organization, come up and do a brief treasurer's report. And then Brian Hutchinson will give us an update on the traffic calming plan. Come on up, Randall.
It hardly seems that I need to stand up here in front of everyone just to read off two numbers, but that's exactly what I'm going to do. Business checking has, and it's $772.42, and primary savings has $2,803.34. We had a couple expenses just recently due to the door hanger project, which Brian was walking around hanging out some door hangers. So that's it.
That's two numbers I've heard in a long time. Brian, I think, will come up next and talk about traffic and transportation and the calming plan that University developed. Brian is the chair of the so-called transportation committee. So Brian, you ready?
Thank you.
Yeah. Somewhat. Oh, we need a place to put this. Thanks. So I wonder if I could connect the meeting. This is.
What you want it? You just share your.
No, that was the other. I'm connected to the meeting. Thank you. Yeah, so I probably start with just announcing the probably the traffic plan which is approved by the City Council and Chris Wharton, our council member representing District 6, saw on the side recommended it. And let me know that the city is about to program to replicate traffic calming model that we created throughout the city. Starting, I'm not sure about where it would start, but it's and I don't know if that involves the application for funding for the department, for transportation department to staff that project. That's indeed another application, correct?
There's a proposal in the budget to add staff members to transportation. This is a different amount, and we're deciding where to put it right now. Whether put it in transportation or in CMP or where, but it's used for traffic.
Okay, so for those of you who have the microphone and give us some. Okay, yes. So the money is what we in the council of 7 would like to do. That's in addition to the budget proposal from something we can after the budget. One option would be to put the money directly in the transportation department. Another would be to put the money into CIP, which is what was successfully used last year to get the $600,000 for traffic calming on Capitol Hill. But this $2 million would be available citywide, so but this would be others could also apply for it. So it's good just because it's a well-known investment that the council is trying to make in traffic calming. We just haven't worked out yet where we're going to park the money and how we're going to distribute it, but we earmarked the $2 million for traffic calming specifically.
In this, I should say, this is in the context of the city's support of traffic calming throughout the city to reduce the speed volume of traffic on neighborhood streets, keep commuter traffic on the arterials, state roads, and restore livability to neighborhoods. I'm not sure if this shows up, but we have these door hangers that we distribute around our neighborhood, and on the door it's two-sided, and there are QR codes. Thanks to Jackson Bradshaw, who's been just over the top on creating a sensational website, but also helping us operate the digital world. And we're getting the message out and soliciting input from the neighborhood on what's happening on the street, if they're in support of traffic calming. And we're about at the 85% level on distribution of these cars throughout the neighborhood. And the results have been overwhelming. There's overwhelming support for slowing traffic, managing it better, and for prioritizing pedestrian safety and bicycle safety. And this, what we've recognized, and we're not the only ones, people around the world have done this, but recognize that if it's not safe to send your friend's kids to school or to the park or around the block, then it's not good enough. And I think that should be the gauge. And that's been a common understanding, is that if it's not safe enough for kids, it's really not a livable neighborhood. And that goes for people who, and so to get to that point, Robert Detective Norgaard is here. I spoke to him about the 3 E's, which education, which is part of what this is, and then the engineering, which Salt Lake Transportation has invested a lot of energy and resources into developing proper engineering. They've gone over our model, and we're testing different features at this point. But thirdly, on that 3-legged stool is enforcement. We want to use enforcement strategically, and because we understand that it has limited effect, long-lasting effect, and so that's why we're trying to engineer the neighborhood to be a slower, have slower travel on the streets. Let's see, I think, is there any, oh yes, the city also on board with over 160 major cities and over 16 countries in the world, has approved the 20-mile-an-hour default maximum speed limit on all secondary, residential streets. This is huge. So now we're part of this world community, which affects, which over 100 million, hundreds of millions of people around the world are benefiting from slower streets. The director of Salt Lake Transportation and other engineers, transportation engineers, realize, and they want to convey that it's not just about speed limit signs. It's not about speed limit signs and policemen. You have to engineer the streets. So that's why this is a collaborative affair and involving residents on every block. People are helping out on quick build projects to bring attention and actually to affect the behavior of drivers around the neighborhood. I'm getting old, so I'm one of those. I'm trying not to get off my lawn types, but I recognize that if we don't have a neighborhood that is safe and quiet, then and this is something that has come up during the COVID experience, then your neighborhood's not any fun. It's also uncomfortable. You don't have a refuge. We need refuge for people throughout the city, and traffic is working against that. So that's part of management. Anybody have any questions? Please go to the CHNC-SLC.org/transportation and give us your ideas and give us your critiques and your suggestions, and join this effort. Thank you very much. Yeah, question?
Did the speed limits get reduced the last week or two?
Yeah, as I said, they're default 20-mile-an-hour max. But I should say, people question why we should go 20 instead of 25. It's like, okay, so those are speed limit signs, but the difference between 25-mile-an-hour speed limit and 20 is the mortality rate. When you go from 20 to 25 miles an hour, you double the mortality rate in any collision between pedestrians and cars. And when you go from 20 to 30 miles an hour, you quadruple mortality rate. And guess how fast people are going in neighborhoods? And maybe Detective Norgaard would say, if it's posted 20, you're probably going 29 or 30. And guess what? That's 4 times mortality rate than if you were just going 20, which any biker would know on the flats at least, or if you're going downhill. At 20 miles an hour, that's pretty good clip, but you minimize the incidence of intersections with cars. So you're not getting passed as often. Cars have their eye on you, they're aware of you. When the car's going twice as fast as bike, chances are they don't see them until they look up on their phones and hit you. So that's the problem. That's why we want to normalize the speed. It's just one of the many benefits: noise, pollution, and just general livability in the neighborhood. I'm starting to repeat myself. I think we should sit down, unless anybody has a question. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Brian is one of our amazing board members. He has spent, I'm going to overestimate a little bit, but I'm going to say about 1 million hours on this project over the last 2 years or so. So, Brian, thank you. Good work. What's next? Okay, Chris Wharton, one of our city council persons. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. Just adding really quick to that too, that doubling the safety rate, was really compelling to me. But the other thing that was really compelling is that in terms of lowering the speed limit is that studies in cities where this has happened has found that the biggest impact is actually on drivers in 30 and 40 mile an hour zones. And when they slowed down the default in residential streets to 20, people were more likely to follow to abide by 30 and 40 mile an hour zones. So we're not just saving the lives of the people that are in the 20 mile an hour zones, but that's having an effect on the 30 and 40 mile an hour zones, which is where we see the really bad behavior. So this isn't an effort to increase revenue. We're not looking to go after people that are going 25 in a 20 mile an hour zone. We're looking to try to influence overall driver behavior to make neighborhoods safer. There's no way to, when you take the cost of what it takes to do patrol, to train officers, all the equipment, all that, we never net money on traffic tickets. It's just not, it's like many things in our justice system, it doesn't generate revenue, net revenue for itself. That money helps offset the cost, but it's still an investment in that. So speaking on that, I want to move to another difficult topic, or a difficult topic, which is that the mayor has proposed a tax increase, a property tax increase, and is proposing 2 different bonds. And there is, the public utilities is projecting a need for an increase to water, sewer, and drainage.
And I just want to walk you through each of those quickly, as quickly as I can. So the property tax has not been raised since 2014. And even though there's a lot of growth that you're seeing in the city, the way that the property tax system works in Utah is that municipalities are guaranteed to get every year at least what they got last year in property tax. So just because the assessed value of your home goes up, that doesn't mean that the city is receiving more money. In fact, some years it actually goes down. What you pay into the system goes down, but the city still gets the same amount of money unless we raise the rate. Now, it's true that we are experiencing unprecedented growth in Salt Lake City. And that growth over time will pay for, or at least the tax theory is that growth will pay for growth. But the demands that we're seeing right now on the city are higher than what the rate of growth is doing. It's outpaced that amount. So we're seeing, for example, from police, increased calls for police service. And that's not the majority of those calls. Majority of the increase are not for actual crimes. It's for welfare checks. It's for this person seems like they're having a crisis. I need somebody to come get them. At the same time, our city employees and all of our city projects are having to come back to the council because of inflation and be reassessed. The cost of everything that's going up for all of us is going up for the city. And the biggest percentage of this would go towards already existing city employees that we want to continue to keep and retain, especially through things like the last 2 years that we just went through, where we really relied so much on the dedicated work of our city employees. There are some new programs that are involved in that property tax assessment as well. We're trying not to put all of that weight on Salt Lake City residents because, as we all know, city's population doubles during the workday. So the mayor's proposing also to do a bond on our sales tax revenue. That would go towards services that we enjoy in the city, but also other people outside the city enjoy, like our parks. And we don't feel like our residents should shoulder the entire burden of our parks use, because a good percentage of our parks use, especially during the last 2 years, but moving forward, has been people coming from outside Salt Lake City to use our trails and our regional parks like Liberty and so forth. And then a part of that is to redo the Glendale Water Park, formerly Raging Waters, and turn that also into a regional park. But the general, so that bond would only go before the city council. That one's not approved by the voters. But it is a portion of the sales tax is used to ensure that bond. The general obligation bond would come before all of you as voters. So you can decide whether or not you want to approve that. That bond would be for also for some of our parks and some of our city facilities. One of the big ticket items in that is the Warm Springs Plunge building, to do a big investment in that to get it to a stable place. Hopefully, if it gets stable, we can invite more people to come tour the building. Potential, if we did a public-private partnership, get an investor in there that's willing to turn the building from stable to habitable, usable, and we can preserve that building. And then the rate increases, you may have heard week before last. So the system is really strained right now, all the pipes for water, drainage, sewer, and the consequences of that are things like last week, where we had a pipe that should not have burst, but did, and created a sinkhole that ate somebody's car and flooded a bunch of people's basements. And you can see the footage of that car being eaten on the news. So we need to make more of an investment in those things. The good news is, I know that sounds like a lot, and it sounds like a lot of stress. if all of that is approved as proposed, and if all of you vote to approve the GO bond, this would, so maxing out on everything that's been requested, it would be a net total of $1 a day for the average city resident that owns property. If that is something that you support, I hope you'll let me know. If that's something that you don't support or that you don't think that you can handle or you want to know more, I hope you'll reach out to me so I can answer your specific questions. But we would be getting a lot for that increase. That would include a bunch of things that I don't have time to mention, but I'm happy to answer a question about if anybody has them. Yes.
Has anyone studied how much the city's water costs to be ethical time future? Because I was horrified by Park City, say they lose 30% of their water, so they're selling 70 of the 100.
Yes.
Now it's still here, I was told it cost 15. Water manager. Those days, so that Park City has been thrown away on fast now, but we got old systems. Nice to see the utilities built higher than they get end up with 5 or 10 or some other target after they've done all this. So everybody gets straight out.
You asked what the amount that we lose each year is. Okay, I have not had that question before, and I will ask, and I will get an answer back to you, back to this group. I would be very, very shocked if it's that high for Salt Lake City as it is for Park City, because we're dealing with 2 totally different grids. So I would be shocked, but I'm not going to make any guarantees because I don't know. I really hope it's not that. One of the other things I wanted to highlight, a big point of what would be in this proposed property tax increase is expanding our ability to take calls from nuisance violations and expanding the park rangers. It's a big priority for me. I want to have park rangers up on the trails. Any of you that live adjacent to the trailheads know that there's a lot of trouble that can come with that. That's not maybe necessarily criminal, or sometimes is criminal, but our officer, these are lower level crimes. Our officers aren't able to get to them as quickly. Having number one, a civilian response to be able to respond to that, and number 2, a park ranger response, I think would be a major quality of life increase for people that are living near our trailheads. And I forgot to say this earlier, but I ran into the Lieutenant Brewer. This is unrelated to the budget. Lieutenant Brewer of the Utah Highway Patrol. Talked to him about increasing enforcement of noise violations. We're very on board with that. We're planning to do another sting in September. But I gave him the information for this group so that he can connect with us on a more regular basis. But that would be great to have UHP supporting, because that's where we see a lot of this exhibitionist riding with the modified exhaust. Any questions? Okay, thanks everybody.
Chris, thank you for all you do for Salt Lake City. You're doing a great job. We really appreciate it. I'm generous. I gave away all my programs. Who's next? You don't want this for your page? Yes, thank you. Officer Norgaard. Thanks.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Bob Norgaard with the Police Department. I'm going to be very brief. Just kind of talk about some things that have been going on in your neighborhood the last month. A lot of the calls that are still happening are the vehicle break-ins, what we call car prowls, most of which are happening between 300 and 700 west on South Temple and North Temple. And then on 200 west between 200 and 500 north. On North Temple, we've designated officers to spend as much time as they possibly can when they're not responding to calls in that North Temple, South Temple area. So we all know that's quite a problem area lately. And officers have been directed that they're not on calls to spend time in parking lots or sidewalks, just being a presence to try to deter that. So we just kicked that program off last week. So we'll wait to see some results on that.
Quick question, how far east and west, specifically north and south Temple, but how far?
So from 300 west to 700 west on north and south. Burglaries are down this month, which is great. Still the storage units on Warm Springs Road at Beck Street continue to get hit a couple times. Property owners are usually pretty good at that, with maintaining operational cameras to try to get us suspect information to get those solved. You may or may not notice a large police presence on 300 West last Saturday. That was due to a infant who was transported to the hospital with some very significant injuries. The father was at home with another 3-year-old, had access to firearms, was making threats to go to the hospital and harm other people. We got that information pretty quickly. We deployed a lot of teams over there and took him into custody. He's now facing some pretty hefty charges. As Mr. Wharton mentioned, the calls for service have been increasing. We've adopted overtime officers to handle a lot of these calls that they can over the phone. That's been very successful, and that's allowed officers to stay on the streets, answer calls for service, and be more of a presence. That's all I have, unless there's any questions. Sir.
How's the staffing? Do you have any issues with recruitment or retention? Are you full staff?
We are not fully staffed. I can't give you an exact number.
Yeah.
Obviously, because I don't know. We just had a recruit class start a couple days ago. There's another class set to graduate very soon, I think in the next month. We're just not getting the applicants that we used to in the volume that we used to. When I was hired in 2007, my applicant group was over 1,000. Now we're getting pools of 70, 80. They have to pass physical fitness tests, background checks, which weeds out more than half of those. So we are actively recruiting as much as we can. We're just simply not getting the numbers anymore. Right?
I was actually at a meeting with the mayor and the chief yesterday. I was actually at a meeting with the mayor and the chief yesterday where they said with this next group of recruits, they would be back at full staffing levels.
Good news. Do you have responsibility for the homeless camp area?
Do I personally hold responsibility?
Does that cover your?
That is in my area, yes.
Dude, you got a 60-second report on, it all got cleared out 2 weeks ago, and then they come back.
Yes, sir.
What's the long-term solution? We need places for them. I don't mind them being there, but what's the policy?
So I asked that same question, what the long-term solution was, and I couldn't get an answer. So the only thing that we can really do is spend as much time with them as we possibly can to do the work, which mainly falls on our bike squad, but they're also tasked with all over the downtown area, Main Street, because that's a problem as well. So they're getting there when they can.
I don't mind them being there. I just worry about the trash and the health part of it when I see big piles of garbage, and I worry about health hazards.
The biggest concern is the health problem.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, when large homeless camps get shut down, it's not the police department doing it. It's not the city of Salt Lake doing it. It's the county health department. There's a lot of health hazards, trash, sewage, raw sewage in these camps, drug paraphernalia, meals, and things like that. It creates obviously a health hazard. So it's the health department.
And that is within Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County.
Yes.
Can I follow up with that? Sorry, I live right across the street from the park.
From Warm Springs Park?
Yes, my neighbor's dog just went to the hospital last night for $1,500 out of just a bag that we had to run into the park. There's a lot of what looked like almost permanent dwellings along the ridge.
Yeah.
And I also have a ton of compassion
them, and I don't know what the solution is, but when you say enforcement, what do you mean by enforcement? Because nobody's telling these people who have been there for months or years to move. And on the other side of the Wharton Park, I won't even walk over there anymore because even like the path is completely blocked with trash and food that's spoiled and like just stuff that's really hazardous to dogs' health, children's health.
Sorry, I'm listening.
I'll address.
I was instructed to.
I'll cover some of it when I talk.
Any other questions, folks? Okay, thank you for your time.
We appreciate what you do. It's not easy work. Thank you for all you do for our city. Now, our state representative for our district, Jennifer Dailey. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I have a program. I didn't seem to help my students. Katherine Kennedy, a member of our school board. Good to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here. So last time I was here, I said that we probably wouldn't keep the tax rate at the same rate because it goes down automatically with the float. As I explained, I can explain that again. But what happens is that if we're allowed to collect the same amount of money unless we do truth in taxation, and because values go up, the tax rate goes down. So one thing we can do is keep the tax rate the same, and and then we gather more money, and we have to do truth in taxation. So I think last time I said it didn't seem like we'd be keeping the tax rate the same, but we'd probably let it go down. This time I'm telling you that I think we are going to have the tax rate stay the same, and that would amount to about $2.49 for $100,000 house. If you're lucky enough to live in $1 million house, then you would pay $20.39. No, $2.39, $23.46. I can't multiply by 10. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. We will have a truth and taxation hearing, and we'll make that final vote on August 2nd, I think is the Tuesday. And so if you have feedback, you're welcome to call me. If we do that, we will probably send that money directly to our employees. It would allow us, for example, to give them, instead of a 3% raise, which is what we can do with the WPU, the raise in the weighted pupil unit that Representative Dailey-Provost and her peers gave us. Thank you so much. That the amount that they gave us equals for us. It's actually a 5% raise, I think. Is that right? But when we take that money and divide it among our employees, it allows us to give them 3%. So we did take that off. This would allow us to give our employees 4.25%. So that's what I think we're going to be doing with that money. We don't know until the school board votes, but that's what I believe we'll be doing with that money. So I hope that you feel like I do, that would be money well spent. The other exciting news I have for this community is that last night we approved another extended learning program, 4th and 6th grade, to come to Washington Elementary, which will bolster their numbers, which is wonderful. Extended learning program is the title we used for SLC's accelerated learning students. And they are tested with the full COGAT test, which of course all tests have implicit bias, but this is one of the best tests. So we test all our 3rd graders with the full COGAT test, and we have identified 55 rising 4th graders that qualify for extended learning services. We've long felt that we want a school on the west side, and I worked hard to get one on the north side of the city. We have 3 extended learning programs on the south side of the city. slightly east of Main Street, and so now we have one on the north side of the city, slightly west of Main Street in Washington. So that's wonderful. We hope that that will help bolster the numbers and keep that wonderful school afloat. Finally, we had a wonderful rally at the Capitol today. I'm sorry I was a few minutes late to the meeting. Supporting with teachers, it was organized by teachers mostly from Bonneville Elementary School, supporting our LGBTQ community and the teachers in that community. So I was pleased to go there and support those teachers. As you know, as you probably know, we have a non-discrimination policy for our LGBTQ community. We're one of the only districts that has that policy. So we want to support those students, make sure that they feel seen and represented, they have space, and also that their teachers have space in the classroom. So we're glad to support them. Any questions? Right, well, that was easy. Just a reminder to get your boosters. Our transmission numbers are on the rise. And hello to all the people joining us online. Thank you for being here as well. And thank you so much for our other representatives. I appreciate all you do to support the SLC School District and all of you in the audience of what you do to support our schools. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Katherine. And you told us last month that you were leaving the state, made that announcement. I'm curious, are they going to allow you to continue on the board until your term ends in December?
So I have a question to our board attorney. I just want to be completely transparent and fair about that. And so I sent that as a question to our board attorney. And I think she thinks yes, but she hasn't gotten back to me. She's had a lot of other things on her plate. So I hope so. And otherwise, I will definitely come and bid you a very fond farewell. But my term does end in December. I do have someone that I'm supporting in the race. And so if you want to email me, I'm happy to let you know who and why. But thank you for asking. And I will be starting at the Harvard School of Government on July 12th. So for a 1-year master's in public administration program. So excited to do that.
Thanks for your service to our schools. Good luck with that program. That's happening whether you stay here on the school board or not. We hope you can stay till December.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katherine. Now, is Amy here? No. So it's Jennifer Dailey-Provost. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I'm not going to try to cut with the microphone, and I don't want to sound good.
Let me adjust it.
Oh, thank you. Okay. This is the woman in heels height. So it's wonderful to be here in person. This is my first in-person meeting since March of 2020. Welcome back, everybody. Yeah, I am masked partly because I'm a hyper diligent public health professional, but also my 5-year-old got COVID last week. She's recovered, everybody's tested negative, but just a couple extra days of protocol for our family. We've been really, really lucky through the pandemic. I hope you all have as well. My daughter's positive test last week was the first of anybody in our family, and I mean, she's 5. She got to stay home with me for 5 days. We got really sick of staring at each other after 5 days, so I was really excited to take her back to preschool this Monday, and that everybody's healthy and doing well. So I hope that's the same for you. A couple of things. First, I want to talk about the Capitol Hill building remodel, and I had a great conversation with Brian about this yesterday. And for those who I have not communicated with fully, I apologize. I was appointed to the Capital Preservation Board, which is really, really exciting. That's a position that I have been serving on for just under a year now. We've only had 4 meetings since I've been there. But I was really, really pleased that the speaker, so when that position was vacated by my predecessor, that the speaker saw fit to have the representative who represents the Capitol serve on the Capital Preservation Board. And it is is my goal, and I am very, very open to hearing from you how I can better achieve that goal, is to increase and improve the communications, the communication lines and that feedback loop between what's going on in the Capitol and our community council here on Capitol Hill. So that said, I know that there's an understanding that the north building is being replaced. And there's some concern about what that's going to look like, what the construction will entail, what the process has been. It has been a several-year-long process as far as, you know, design and planning, an RFP for the development, public feedback, public meetings and whatnot. And I'm beginning to understand that while the information on the Capital Preservation Board meetings is out there, the meetings are public. It's like many, many things in the world. You don't know the information. You don't know to go look for the information. And so I did send an email with a link to the information email for the CHNC. The state's Open Public Meeting Act requirements require posting of meetings, which I'm sure many of you know. There's a website, a government website that has all meetings posted. And on that website, so that's the link I sent you. On that site, if you click a link, you can sign up for push notifications right to your email. And then in addition, when I have a Capital Preservation Board meeting pop up on my calendar, I will forward it to you. They are public meetings. They are open to the public. So I am going to pass around this. You may not keep it because it's my only copy, but they are just renderings of it. And so don't take this all as, you know, written in Capitol building stone. But it does provide a kind of a nice oversight. And probably I did also email renderings that we have. So I'll pass this around. A couple of things that I want to mention about the new building. And I know that a big construction project is really, really hard to live around. I, for one, hate the north building. It's so ugly. And right now it's an empty cubicle farm. It's got huge point source emissions. It doesn't have any energy efficient anything because it was built in the late 40s. And so I think that given that it's going to come down and will be replaced with a building that matches the rest of the campus, very in line with the architecture and style that the rest of the campus is. And I'm not saying everybody has to agree with me. I personally think that our Capitol campus is quite beautiful. And it will be energy efficient. And the cubicle farms and the hundreds of employees that have been working in that building for the past many decades, most of them have been moved off campus to other government buildings. And the biggest majority of the main floor of the building will be the new Utah Museum. The actual space for that museum hasn't been determined on how big it is, and that will determine that the space they use, this is to Brian's question to me, is how many people will be visiting that museum. When they determine how big the museum is, number one, and if it's going to be free or have a charge for fare, that's when they'll determine what the traffic is. Their number one most anticipated source of traffic are the school kids that are already coming up to the Capitol campus for tours anyway. And you'll see in the renderings that I emailed and in the book, the ideas that they have for this museum are quite beautiful, and the building will be energy efficient, which I personally really, really like. It also will have a parking garage underneath it with 396 parking spaces, which we hope the goal is to get that. First of all, get people off the street, all of that horrendous parking off the street. And quite honestly, make the Capitol more accessible because it is the people's house, and we really, most of us truly do want people there engaging with us as lawmakers. And so I'm hoping that will make it more accessible. The timeline is that demo will actually start in August. So it is pretty far back off the street. So all the fencing and everything will go up in July. Demolition will start in August. It is pretty far off of 500 North, so they don't anticipate traffic problems going east-west on 500 North or on East Capitol. Now, that doesn't mean there's not going to be, trucks and whatnot. It's still a construction site. There will still be things moving in and out, but if anybody who lives in Utah in the summer, there's construction is just the way of life, right? So I really hope that it's minimal. If there are big problems that are persistent and a true nuisance, please let me know, because I want to make sure that that's communicated and that those problems are mitigated as much as possible and as quickly as possible. And hopefully, and look forward to a much nicer building that doesn't create horrendous point source emissions right here on Capitol Hill. Okay, a couple of other things really quick. There will be a Memorial Day event at the Capitol, sponsored by the Veterans Administration on the south steps of the Capitol, so just be aware of that if you're planning on coming and going. I don't know how much traffic that will create, but just be aware that that's happening. It's at, I believe, at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll be there if you want to join me. That would be wonderful. To your point about water loss, we actually talked about this in Revenue and Taxation Committee this morning at today was interim, and so this 30% water loss is actually widely known in most water infrastructure. So I hope Salt Lake's not as bad, but it is something that the Water Conservancy districts have a responsibility to address, and actually statutory responsibility to address. So hopefully we'll make some progress on that horrible waste of water, particularly given that we are in a mega drought and things are not looking positive right now. To the whole question about homelessness and homeless abatements. Officer Norgaard mentioned that, enforcement and the police enforcement is just to assist, to be there as technical assistance for the Department of Health, because the Department of Health actually has the statutory responsibility to abate those camps, because they are unhealthy and unsafe for the people that are living there. They are unhealthy and unsafe for communities around where the homeless camps are. The Department of Health does send in caseworkers every time there's an abatement beforehand to engage with the people in the camps, to do everything they can to encourage them to go into the homeless resource centers, try to connect them with services. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It's not a perfect solution. Obviously, if it was, we would be seeing a solution. But we also have our homelessness coordinating council that just got almost all told for housing and services, almost $100 million in the legislative session this year. Former Senate President Wayne Niederhauser is the chair of that committee, and there is robust, consistent communication between that council and the legislature and municipal governments to try to finally figure out some lasting, meaningful solutions to our homelessness crisis. I know it doesn't feel like any progress is being made. I know that. I see it. It's really, really hard to see people struggling with homelessness. But please don't take that to believe that we're not doing anything and we're not trying. We're trying really, really hard to meet people where they are. When it comes right down to it, we don't have homes that are affordable, that people often with a complex myriad of issues that stem from struggles to find work, mental health, other health, physical health issues, substance use disorder, a criminal background. So it's a complex problem. I'm always really anxious to hear what ideas and feedback you might have to continue to address this problem. But please know that this is a multifaceted effort, and we are really grateful to our police officers for making sure that those abatements, they're creating a safe place for this to happen so that it doesn't get violent or dangerous for anyone. Those are all that I have. I do want to mention really quickly, my friend Suzanne Harrison has popped in online really briefly. I hope we can do a county candidate forum at some point. She's running for county council at large and is really anxious to hear from you if you have questions or concerns for her. So if you'd like me to connect you with her contact information, I would be really happy
so that she's running against a 12-year incumbent for the county council at large. Questions? Thank you.
Always amazed that when our public servants, our elected officials come and speak to us, and how committed, dedicated, and effective they are. Jennifer, thank you so much, along with all the others that we really appreciate it. Well, we're now going to have a couple of our state senators. Oh, is Jamie Stokes here? No, she's not here. Thank you for reminding me of that. So our state senate candidates, Derek Kitchen and Jennifer Plumb. I think what we'd like to have you do is take about 10 minutes each. Where's Derek? Derek. Derek first and then Jennifer, is that all right? So it's 7:15, not quite, 7:13, at 7:23, and until 7:33 for you, Jennifer, would that be all right? Okay, we look forward to your remarks. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. So my name is Derek Kitchen, and I thought I would use the first few minutes of this to talk about today's interim meetings, because as you may know, I am currently your state senator in the Utah Legislature. So today we had a really great meeting at the state capitol. It started out with committee meeting for me, Economic Development and Workforce Services Subcommittee. I've been on this committee for about 4 years now. And so all of the affordable housing and homelessness services and economic development matters go through this committee. For the first about 45 minutes, we had updates from the chief economist from the University of Utah, Natalie Gochner, members from the Economic Development, EDC Utah. They came forward and talked to us about the state of affairs here in the state. And then we had Teresa Foxley as well come through, and they do a lot of recruitment and engagement with potential new recruits, new industries coming into the state of Utah. And I wanted to put just on your radar that everybody is raising the red flag right now around a looming recession. There's a lot of concern around the labor force, the lack of investment in some areas, and just to be mindful about the way that we're spending money, not only as the state of Utah, but Salt Lake City municipality, and then you as an individual, being mindful of your pocketbooks. So we had a really great conversation there. We're really running tight on affordable housing units, which I'm sure is no surprise to many of you. Midday, we were on the Senate floor and we were honoring Nathan Chen. I don't know if anybody of you know who Nathan Chen is. He's a Utah Olympian, figure skater, well decorated, really talented young man, about 23 years old, really well spoken too. He came to the Senate chamber and spoke to us about his experience in Beijing and elsewhere, and his excitement for the prospect of Utah hosting the 2030 or perhaps the 2034 Olympics, which will be determined in the next couple of months, so you can keep your eyes out for that. And then this afternoon, we had really interesting committee meetings on public utilities, which I serve on during the interim. So outside of the general session, I serve on public utilities. Right now, the Cox administration, Governor Cox, is positioning itself with the new renewable energy plan, a statewide plan around how to manage, energy. Obviously, costs are going up across the board. One thing that was really clear to me is the fact that they're not really thinking about renewable energy in sort of the big vision way that I think a lot of Salt Lake City residents would expect, especially considering how much federal dollars are coming through the state of Utah. And so, as you know, I'm a Democrat. I'm in the minority caucus, super minority. And so the opportunity that we have as members of the super minority is to really push the administration in our committee meetings. One big issue I wanted to put on your radar, if climate change is a concern for you, is the fact that out of the Uinta Basin, there is an enormous amount of methane leakage happening in state-owned facilities. And so, really shining a bright light on the fact that methane, about 8% loss of methane in all of the extraction that's going on out in the Uinta Basin. It's a big concern because many of you know that climate change is a big concern, but methane is actually amplifying concerns.
Do you want to,
in greenhouse gas.
we get
That's a big one.
almonds at
And finally,
Winco.
for the interim session today, we did confirm a new Supreme Court justice today, so that was really exciting. She comes from Weaver County. She's really well qualified, well decorated, somebody that we should all be really proud of. And honestly, I'm proud of Spencer Cox and everyone else for approving her. So that was an exciting day at the Capitol. I just got back about 25 minutes ago, so it's been a busy day. So I'll leave that there. I'd be happy to talk to any of you individually about some of the issues that we're facing in the Utah legislature. And with that, I will pivot quickly and make my here. So my name is Derek Kitchen, and I have had the pleasure of representing you in the Utah Senate over the last 4 years. Many of you may know me because of my work representing Salt Lake City as a council member. I was first elected to the Salt Lake City Council in 2015, where I served for a term. And then in 2018, I was elected to the Utah State Senate. I got my start in politics back in 2013 when I sued the state of Utah for marriage equality. So Utah, to the surprise of most anybody in the United States, became the very first state in the whole country to legalize same-sex marriage through the federal court system, which was a really exciting prospect for us in the state of Utah back in 2013. And I'm really honored to have played a part in that. Obviously, with the recent leak on the Roe v. Wade decision, we're all really concerned about the slippery slope with all of our rights that we've gained over the last couple of decades. So obviously, we need to be keeping a firm eye on that, and something that I'm concerned about as the only openly gay member of the Utah legislature. So I am running for re-election this year to the Utah State Senate, District 9, where I have the opportunity of making my case for you. I would really love to earn your support for re-election this year. Many of you may know me through all of my work on affordable housing, some of the stuff that I've done on transportation. We obviously have Chris Wharton here, who I had the pleasure of serving with for 2 years while I was on the city council. But the Utah legislature is a different place. Like I mentioned earlier, I am a Democrat in the Utah Senate. I am in the super minority. And we have a lot of challenges with the current makeup of the Utah Senate. I know what it's like to live in Salt Lake City. I know what it's like to rent and to see the rent go up $200 or $400, to see my family members that are living on a fixed income that may own their home, but not able to make ends meet because the property taxes are going up. The cost of living in Salt Lake City is skyrocketing, and I know what that's like deeply. I represent you because I am you in many ways. We all breathe this terrible air. It's important that we take meaningful, immediate actions, not only on climate change, but on investments in hard rail infrastructure, making sure that we're funding transit in a meaningful way. We have the Great Salt Lake that's shrinking, right? If we lose the Great Salt Lake, not only are we losing a critical riparian corridor and a very sensitive ecosystem, but it spells bad news for our air quality. All of this growth that we're talking about, the Utah legislature loves to talk about the record growth in our state. If we lose our Great Salt Lake, we're not going to have a valley to live in. So air quality, we know what it's like to breathe terrible air in Salt Lake City, right? We know what it's like to fight hard, to get out there and to organize, to gather signatures, to get ballot initiatives put together, whether that's cannabis or Medicaid or independent redistricting, and to have the supermajority in the Utah legislature throw that in the trash. I don't know about you, but that didn't make me feel very respected as a voter in the state of Utah, right? So I'm running for re-election because I want you to know that I will always stand up. 3 minutes? I won't take that long. I want you to know that I will always stand up, not just for the voters of Salt Lake City, not just for democracy, but I will stand up for you. I will fight back against the supermajority, because at the end of the day, we all know that decisions are made in closed-door caucus meetings in the Republican supermajority. Any bill that a Democrat passes, no matter how good you are, Representative, no matter how good you are, every bill that a Democrat passes has been vetted, edited, and rubber stamped by the Republican supermajority. We're not going to get anything in the Utah Senate or in the Utah House until we can build a coalition and throw our weight around a little bit. So I hope you can turn to me and know and rest with confidence, knowing that you've got their kitchen in your corner and that I'm out there fighting for you. So I hope to earn your vote in this election. Ballots mail out on the 7th of June, so we're about 2 weeks out. And I'd love to engage with you one-on-one. I've got some flyers in the back as well, so please, I'll stick around for a little bit. Would love to engage a little bit more. And I have maybe 60 seconds, so ask a question or two.
Sure, take questions out. Thanks, Derek. We appreciate the remarks. Jennifer, please.
And then I realized, nice, you have it right here, a little bit different heels, like, shred the word, apologies there. All right, 24, she was spot on, 23, I think you said. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you all peopling again. I think we've missed it, and we have struggled a little bit with how to get back into it. I had my mask on, and then I had it under my chin, and then I had it back up, and so here we are. My name is Jen Plumb. I am a Utah local, born and raised here. I am running for Senate District 9, which they have done some things with boundaries, right? So Senate District 2 has now morphed into Senate District 9, and unfortunately, we've lost some of the folks in this area in that district. I think that's where our hearts are still with those of us that look to represent this. But it's about the lower avenues to 1700 South and Redwood Road up Immigration Canyon. So it's kind of that middle central spot. Some of the folks in this district have been represented by Senator Kitchen, and some have been represented by Senator Cheney. For me, this is an opportunity that feels kind of like it's been 50 years in the making. I have lived my entire life in this district, whether that was in the avenues or over near East High or Immigration Canyon or down lower over by 9th and 9th. This has kind of been home to me my entire time in Utah. Raised my child here, I went to all public schools here. I was lucky enough to get introduced to politics by my grandmother, I'm named Grandma Dolly, or Dolly Plumb, who worked with Ted Wilson and Senator Moss and some of these kind of iconic folks in the Democratic traditions of the state, which we haven't quite had a governor or a senator in a while, right? But so I got exposed to that when I was really young, and then had some things happen in my life that drove me towards policy. A big one was losing my brother to a heroin overdose in 1996, right here in Salt Lake. And I took that opportunity to find ways to perhaps find peace from the pain that had happened to my family. And for me, that meant that we kept other people alive. That meant that my brother, who unfortunately died on a basement floor because the folks were afraid to call 911, that there were other ways for people to potentially not have that same thing happen to them. I was really, really fortunate to be put in a space with Representative Carol Spackman Moss, who heard this random, very kind of liberal concept for Utah, harm reduction. Why don't we put naloxone, the opioid overdose antidote, in the hands of people who use drugs, in the hands of people who might be around overdoses, and let them save lives? This was really pretty progressive for this state. This was about 2013, 2014. We had tried a decade or so before, we being my family, my dad, some other harm reductionists, someone named Luciana Colano, and Zach Baker, to even talk about syringe exchange in the state. You couldn't even talk about not making it out of rules. You couldn't even make it out of a legislator's office with them saying that's something that we would consider. And so fortunately, 2014 was the year that Carol Spackman Moss stepped up and was willing to go there. And with forming collaborative discussions, with hard discussions, EMS folks, law enforcement folks, criminal justice folks, treatment recovery folks, people who have lived in the spaces, there was a bill written that was passed by the Utah legislature with no negative votes. When I hear that you cannot pass good legislation as a liberal in this state, I just don't get it, because that's not been my experience. in my, just since 2014 to 2021, I didn't do any light bills this year, I've been able to steward and work on 14 different pieces of legislation with legislators. And so I have a struggle when I hear that it's too hard to do good things and important things, because that has not been entirely my experience. I feel like there are amazing legislators, Janie Iwamoto, Representative Dailey-Provost, Luz Escamilla, people who get good bills through. Jamie passed 13 bills this last session. So for me, looking at this opportunity, I see it as an opportunity to work on issues that are crucial and critical for me. We all have priorities. Every politician has priorities. Every politician has their areas of expertise. I happen to be a pediatrician and an emergency medicine doc and a mom, a dog rescuer. So my kind of priorities, not only do I make them priorities, I intend to actually deliver on those priorities. To lay out for you the big ones for me, first of which is that opioid space. We are now 38th in the nation. We were 4th in the nation when we undertook these efforts. We got bills in place that people would be okay with. We here at our own libraries have naloxone access laws, because we went back here from 2014 to 2016 and put an even better naloxone bill in that said any human in Utah, any individual in the state of Utah can furnish naloxone to somebody else. You don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be a pharmacist, you don't have to go into those scary spaces. You can see your librarian, you can see someone at a syringe exchange, you can see someone in an EMS space or in a law enforcement space. We've still got work to do though, and I think, I don't know if any of you heard this week, 108,000 Americans dead now in the last 12 months from overdoses. We were on the right path, and a pandemic within a pandemic was not great for folks. It's gotten worse, and we are getting an opportunity with $266 million in opioid settlement funding coming in to do good work. I would love to be in that space. I chaired the Utah Opioid Task Force as well as the Opioid Settlement Spending Committee to put a blueprint together for Utah. I want to be a part of helping us do good and appropriate and not favoring things with this money, right? I want it to go to the people who've been harmed. I want to ameliorate the harms. Second space for me is pretty close to home, and that's the attacks that came out on our transgender youth this last session and the session before that. I sat through numerous meetings with stakeholders and hearings and committees. My own daughter is transgender, and so while we complain about not being able to do things and waiting for the legislature to change and become no longer super majority, my kid lost their rights to play in schools. And I just feel like we have got to work on building bridges in those challenging spaces, because when we don't, and when we don't keep in mind that you have to have relationships to get results in politics, people lose. It isn't just fights between parties, it's people and people's needs. I intend to stay squarely invested in that space, and I have a prediction, if it's not a premonition, that they will go after the medical care for our kids this next session. They did try in 2021 and in 2020, and thankfully didn't get very far. That's my prediction of where they go next. I am equally concerned about the environment, as I think most of us are. I think I saw a report just today, I think it was in the Lancet, that 1 in 7 deaths worldwide is related to air pollution. And I will tell you that when I'm in the ER at Primary Children's, I don't need to look outside to tell you what the air looks like. I can just look at the list on the who's in the waiting room. Asthma, respiratory complaints, respiratory distress, hypoxemia. I can tell you what's happening, and we can't tolerate that. We have absolutely got to move forward with policies, with sanctioning polluters, with working on. It's not just the Great Salt Lake doesn't have any water; it's that the dust kicking up is going to be a problem. We've got a port coming in. It really appears it's happening, right? What are we going to do to minimize and mitigate those harms that are coming from that environment? And then last but certainly not least, as a female physician, the news that Roe is potentially on its way down really, 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 really horrifies. There is one physician there now, Rosemary Lesser, that is in the legislature, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. She is an OBGYN. She is an Army vet. She's up in the Ogden area. She's facing a rough race. In fact, if anybody feels like throwing a little good to somebody, check out Dr. Lesser, because she really is going to be needed in these next years in the legislature. But I think as we saw through the pandemic, a voice of science isn't always heard as much as we would like it to be heard there. That doesn't mean we don't keep going forward with the medicine and with the science, and we have got to help people understand. I don't even, in my mind, Plan B is potentially at risk, right? The morning after pill, and I just the other day at another community council, someone told me, well, that's just an abortion pill. Actually, it's not. Hopefully stops you from ovulating or kicking off an egg, or if you did kick off an egg before that, hopefully it stops the sperm from getting into the egg, or hopefully it stops it from implanting. These are basics. But when we're looking at this time and space, we have got to be able to speak to folks up there that don't hear or think basics on their own. I feel really strongly that the issues that are so critical to me are also so critical to all of us and to our community. Do I know everything? Absolutely not. Do I pretend to? Absolutely not. Do I feel really lucky to have am I old enough to say a Rolodex of folks that can hopefully help me navigate some of these other areas that I don't know? Absolutely. That is my hope, is that I can take my areas of expertise and get as much impact as possible and rely on my fellow community members, my fellow leaders, to work in the spaces where I maybe am not. So I'm always open to questions, texts, phone calls. We do Utah naloxone trainings. We have another one tomorrow. We do at least once or twice a month. This month, we actually have 4 of them. So UtahNaloxone.org, if you want to learn how to use naloxone. I actually brought some tonight if anybody wants to. I can put you on the way out. Any questions, any thoughts, any things? Yeah.
That's the time.
Oh, that's the time. I thought you had a question. You're like, no, just stop. That's enough. Thank you all very, very much. I do appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Politics is tough. I think we all recognize that. We respect and appreciate anyone who goes into the field. So thanks for your commitment, for your sacrifice, both of you. Well, we have 10 minutes. And we haven't had a time to do this in the past, at least not much. But I wanted to take the next 10 minutes to give you, our neighbors, an opportunity to ask questions about our neighborhood, to offer suggestions, to voice concerns, whatever. This is the time to do that. And that's in fact one reason why we have this council, is to identify issues, concerns, problems, opportunities, to bring them up and talk about them, solving problems, building opportunities, and so on. So the floor is now yours. We've got about 10 minutes to do that. Don Savage, take the mic.
My name is Don Savage. I'm a resident at Zion Summit, about 200 units there. We're in our own little world. You know, we go in the parking garage, we're all secure, and we have our own friends. And it's wonderful to be here to find out the rest of the community here, what's going on with our police and fire and our reports. Driving here before this meeting, coming down 300 West, right behind the gas station here, the Chevron station on 600 North, all this graffiti. Took a picture of it. I asked Chris, hey, what about the graffiti? He says, Don, you need to download the app, Salt Lake City app. So Chris, I did. I downloaded the app. I went to it, the service request. I put the graffiti was one of the pull down. There was a place to submit the photo, the address, and I did it. So I'm going to be promoting the Salt Lake City app with all the other services so that we can be involved and responsive as citizens. So I want to thank this group, those who volunteered their time, put a recommendation, they double your pay. Okay, so put that request in, you got that? And I appreciate our legislators. I know our legislators here well. They're our best value. I think they get paid. I think I did the calculations. They get about $1 an hour for the amount of time they put in and year out. It's a great value we have. So I appreciate our elected officials here and this council to make our community a better place.
What is the name of the app?
SLC Mobile.
SLC Mobile. Yeah, just at the App Store, up right up there.
Oh, Salt Lake City. That's cool. Thanks, Don. Rick, come on up if you don't mind. For the benefit of our folks at home, especially. You can hear much better if you
And I'll just add, last Friday I was in Oklahoma City and I went to the state capitol there. It's almost identical to ours, 1970. They just spent $200 million redoing it, opening it. very similar to ours, and have a beautiful museum right there. And it's wonderful having it on site. So when tourists come, we really miss that. So that's going to be a real positive for our state. If you want to see a good example, Oklahoma, just brand new, spectacular.
Rich, go ahead. Rich Middleton, is that correct?
It's Richard Middleton, and I'm glad I called Mike, because I know the foreign accent is difficult for some of you. I'm very surprised that we've not had an outbreak of next door protests against what happened on Sunday. And for anybody who lives closely, I live on Main Street. Marmalade basically shut down completely. It became unworkable. And this was because of the youth conference. This is nothing to do, I'm not saying anything against the church having a conference. What is a problem is when you suddenly invite 2,000 people, or whatever it was, park in an area that is already very, very congested, where a lot of people have to park on the street because they don't have driveways. So by about 5 o'clock, most of the parking places are taken. By 6 o'clock, I was going down to visit from Main Street to visit my daughter on 2nd West. They called me and said, wait a minute, you can't get to our house. You can't get onto the driveway because people are parked across the driveway. They then went and made some suggestions for people parked across the driveway, who gave them some obscene gestures, which is a great way of starting a religious assembly, right? But to be quite honest, I could not even get down the steep hill on Main Street because there was endless southbound traffic. So I had to back up that hill. At my age, I can't do that sort of thing. Now, had there been urgency of any sort, nothing could have got through into Marmalade District. By the time on these narrow streets, with a car each side, there is just about room to run a car up in it. One car. If you mark two-way, incident, all ones going south on Main Street, reach the bit where it's northbound only one way. They can't turn around because they've got all the cars behind. Where do they go? They go through the do not enter sign into the third north intersection. Okay, end of rant. Point is, everybody knew that this conference was going to happen. Therefore, the people coming to the conference had to be told you can't park in a residential neighborhood, particularly if we're going to do traffic calming, narrow lanes, more bike, etc., etc. It's intolerable Sunday evening. So we need to get an understanding. Capitol parking lot, fairground, I don't know, somewhere. But there has to be a mechanism that large assemblies of people are told residential areas are for residents, plus their visitors. In Brand, I don't know, deal with this, but thank you.
Mr. That's an excellent comment. Thank you. I will commit the resources of the board to contact the church downtown and discuss the issue with them. I'm sure they don't want that to happen any more than we do. If they know that it's a problem, I'm quite certain they'll work to help mitigate it. Thanks for your comment. Oh, we have one online person. Is it Christina Rodriguez? Is she going to be on?
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me. I had a question about the traffic calming. When Brian spoke about this earlier in the meeting, he said that there would be some strategic enforcement. And my question is, where does this enforcement come? Every time we have an issue, excuse me, we're told that our police department is understaffed. And on top of that, my understanding is that the motor squad officers are the only ones who are tasked with traffic enforcement. And there are 12 officers for the whole city. So where does that enforcement come from?
Christina, thank you for your question. Most of us couldn't hear it, but I did. And I think Brian actually also read your chat. So Brian, you want to step up real quick and respond to Christina's question? Thanks again, Christina.
Thank you, Christina. Yes, we've actually had several meetings with Salt Lake PD over the last few years, and Len McBride spearheaded the program to manage the exhibitionist drivers and noise ordinance and muffler enforcement. I don't know if you can hear me. Yes, anyway, the problem we have with enforcement is, as was expressed earlier, is a lack of personnel. And so this has happened to the force ever since the protest a couple years ago and the destruction, and then a management crisis, and that's something that is a work in progress. I don't want to suggest that we have that solved. It is what I was trying to highlight is we're not just going to throw or solicit police to manage a certain area on a random basis. There has to be whatever enforcement efforts occur need to be strategic, and that involves data-driven management policy. So this is ain't going to happen tomorrow, but what is going to happen tomorrow is the education that's happening now, and also the engineering. That's a work in progress, and we're developing, refining the elements that will be distributed throughout the neighborhood. That is going to happen over the course of the next 18 months, or possibly longer. The first two legs of that stool are happening, and the enforcement part is a work in progress.
Thank you, Brian. I will say that the force was down 99 officers about 2 years ago. And I think I heard someone say, was it you, Chris, that they're almost, someone said this, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, that's right. They're almost up to where they were about 2 years ago. Is that about what you heard?
It's their staffing level will be filled in the next class.
Oh, okay. So they have been building up the force. It's probably a few months down the road still, but so that is happening, Christina. We'll stay in contact with them to help get resources directed to our neighborhood as much as possible. Well, we're approaching the time, but I think if you want to stay for the next few minutes, we can entertain another question or two, or comment, or concern, or suggestion for the neighborhood. Anyone online or here? Okay, well, then this is a good time to quit. Thank you, everyone. The folks online, thanks for taking the effort to join us via Zoom. We hope the sound was adequate. Give us feedback if you would. And those of you that came, thanks very much. We'll see you next month, June 15th. Very well.